What is the most stunning way you've seen someone throw their life away? Former friend of mine got her master's degree and a great job working for a police department. She married a head burglar for some reason and she got into herself and ended up in prison for storing his burgled goods in her house. My high school's valedictorian went to Harvard and graduated with a double major and was on the road to success when he enrolled in Stanford Business School for his master's. During his second week of grad school, he got absolutely crap-faced, got behind the wheel of a car, drove the wrong way down the highway and plowed headfirst into a taxi, killing one of its passengers. He's now serving 6 years in prison. My brother's friend decided to go to college to become a weed dealer, took out loans, didn't go to class, and ended up dropping out within a semester. I still have no idea why he thought he had to go to college to sell weed to college kids. It's not like they'd check his student id. Well, I have an easy answer for you. He's an idiot. Cousin of mine got a full ride basketball scholarship into a small college. He decided not to go. He made the decision to get into instead, became a dealer and got his girlfriend addicted and pregnant, and managed to get his 2 sisters addicted as well. Guy went to prison twice. The mother of 2 of his babies killed herself recently. His father, who was a relatively decent man, dealt with all of this by stress eating himself to death. Maybe I'm just exposed to more as I approach 30, but I swear more people are dying from drugs now than 10 years ago. Either that or it's because I moved to Ohio and we have a freaking epidemic of epic proportions out here. My older sister was a professional model, straight A student, a stellar cross-country athlete, and church volunteer. She was offered full ride scholarships to multiple top-tier universities across the country. She chose a local religious college, got engaged to a professional dancer. In less than a semester he convinced her to drop out of college, quit her job, and drive him out to California where he promptly dumped her. After that she hopped onto the alcoholic train, which was technically just using our dad's coping mechanism for everything. She met another dude who got her pregnant. He convinced her to have a second kid, then left her for another woman as soon as she got pregnant a second time. During that time my little sister moved in with her to help her out and they discovered them together. It started out with them abusing my little sister's Adderall. Then midway through her second pregnancy I see her and she's pregnant AF and she just looked green. Her movements and speech and the way her skin looked stretched over her body were horrifying. The house my sisters shared was a sty. Dirty diapers, dishes, and garbage everywhere. It reeked of pee and there were clothes and makeup strewn everywhere. They eventually moved in with my dad and his terrible wife and all of them lived happily methed up after. I estranged myself, but not before I lost every single ounce of respect for my family. I have looked them up in recent years and both of my sisters have been arrested for shoplifting and the older one has had multiple DUIs. It's not incredibly stunning, just kind of eye-opening how bad some people are at running their own lives. My brother's ex-wife broke up the family in a way that caused a lot of pain and stress. She's terrible at confrontation, so instead of talking to her husband, she decided to just stop coming home and sleeping at her new boyfriend's house. He was left with 2 toddlers and no clue what his wife was up to until a few weeks later when she finally confessed. Then the next 18 months was her trying to get back with him, insulting him, hoping they get be separated but stay married for the insurance, saying she was going to be homeless if he didn't take her back, and so many more things. She makes $60K a year and lives in a big city suburban area, yet she can't seem to do anything to take care of herself, find housing, get insurance, or her kids. They are finally divorced and my brother couldn't be happier. One of my best friends, a dude I talk to daily, had almost died in his 30s and had to have a kidney transplant. Didn't smoke, drink or do drugs. He had a successful business, 2 beautiful teenage daughters and was a very chill person. Went to every cheer competition and ball game for the kids, etc. He had marriage problems, his wife was very closed off and was cheating. He would talk to me about it but never acted like it was a big deal, more of if she stays she stays, if she goes that's fine too. He took the whole family on vacation to Mexico. When they got back he killed her and then himself. To this day I don't know why. I know his daughters and they are doing great but I would never ask them something like that. They found them when neither parent answered the phone. I wonder if he didn't have more medical issues and just snapped, but I'll probably never know. Knew a punk rocker who idolized Sid Vicious, so he quit school, moved to the streets of downtown Toronto and started shooting H. Also, Sid Vicious. My alcoholic Phil got a double lung transplant, but he was drinking again within a month. He died within 2 years of the transplant, never doing anything but drinking and wallowing in solitude. I'm amazed they didn't pick up on his obviously chronic alcoholism as part of the process. Literally last week my friend had a single lung transplant, and even though he was a firefighter at 9/11, who you think would be a walk-in, they were still very stringent with the approval of the op. Had a friend who I played football with and he was a great defensive back. Had a chance to go to college for free on a football scholarship. One night he was drunk and got into his car, drove for about 15 minutes, crashed and broke both of his legs and got addicted to drugs. Never came back to sports. This kid I knew joined the Marines, got through boot camp and was decided to be a recruiting assistant while he waited for space in his MOS school to open up. I met him briefly after he had just came back from boot camp. Dumb kid TBH. That was all fine and dandy though. Then, for whatever reason, he spent thousands, like all of his money or dollars, on strippers and started doing coke. That's a dishonorable discharge in the Marines, aka he fricked up his future real bad and is now used as a cautionary tale by the recruiters. It's really easy to get into hard drugs and spend thousands in a few hours if you meet the right stripper and have no self-control. Source: was offered hard drugs by a stripper once before leaving a city for good and splurged a bit. Said no thanks. Like only time I've ever been to a strip club. My wife's brother. He was awarded millions after an industrial accident. Wasted it in record time. Married a woman older than his mother and had to flee the country because he had built up a massive debt within an insanely small time frame. And the wife had assaulted a doctor while in the hospital during a routine checkup. By now he has fled 2 more countries because he builds up new debt to everyone and everything he can. He could have had it all. Instead he wasted it. Friend of mine partied late one day till 6 AM and then went home. Hung himself up. He hid his depression and suicidal thoughts from all of us, and no one ever even suspected that he would do such a thing. I'm sorry for your loss. My best friend. Late best friend. He was always troubled. He was half blind, middle school dropout, tons of mental health issues, substance abuse, but his soul was absolutely beautiful. 10/10 amazing person. He met and fell in love with a woman who made him better in every way. She got him his first pair of glasses. His good eye overcompensated and he had supervision in it. His bad eye began to work. She helped him get his GED. He enrolled in college. She helped him cut back on his drinking and almost all of the substance abuse. He met and connected with a therapist and unpacked his childhood. She took him to get his learner's permit and he was actually turning out to be a good driver despite his eye. He was so happy. Then one night, they had separate plans. He decided to go on a bender and hung himself. He rose above all the bulls life handed him up until that moment. He called so many people and yet didn't call anyone who would stop him. No note, no outward signs. It's been 8 years next month. He would have been someone more amazing than he already was. But one night of drinking did him in. This is a sad story. I wonder if he maybe had a hard time dealing with the successes. The guy who sexually assaulted me, he has a loving wife, a son who adored him and another child on the way. But he couldn't keep his dong in his pants around 8-year-old me and got sent to prison and became a registered sex offender for life. Prison is too good for him. You were 8. My dad and uncle used to own a manufacturing plant alongside my grandfather. After he passed away, however, the two began to have a falling out over who should succeed him. Then, in 2002-03, my uncle literally barred my dad from entering his own business, as he had taken sole control of the company without even telling him. This led him into a slippery slope of depression, even going so far as to attempt suicide when I was just 4 years old. However, my uncle made some awful management decisions, just in time for the 2008 recession, and thus bankrupted the company. After that, he had a nasty divorce with his wife, and basically spent the next 8 years drinking away his fortune. He was found dead in an alleyway 3 years ago by my cousin. What's even worse is that this was when he and my dad were just starting to reconcile after years of little to no contact. Really sad to think that it could have ended on a high note. I'm sorry to hear about your dad. I really hope you are fine and having better days. But yes, it sucks how people change just for power. To catch a predator, guy comes looking for a 13-year-old girl, strips off all his clothes in the house and expects the girl to perform a sex act on a cat while he watches. To catch a predator is this thread in a nutshell. Teachers, rabbis, ruined marriages. You can watch these dudes' lives unfold in real time. TLDR. The entire fricking thread. M will frick you up. Don't pick a university or college because your GFBF goes there. Suicidal thoughts are not always super obvious. Marrying or getting knocked up by a drug dealer is a really bad life choice. I'll stop scrolling now. This summary is a good stopping point. I was in a long-term rehab with a guy who left the program early. He ended up murdering someone in a state of methamphetamine psychosis and is now doing life without parole in Texas. He's currently 25 and was 23 when he was sentenced. He was a bright, talented, and articulate person who just couldn't get the monkey off his back. Some people are too young to realize their qualities and self-worth. It's a shame that they realize this when it's too late, and they're paying high prices for bad decisions made in the past. Guy I played football in HS was an all-world QB who could do it all. Basically he played like a teenage Steve Young and looked like Ben Affleck. He had scholarship offers from some big-time football schools, but he was always a bit spoiled and used to having things handed to him. He turned the big football schools down to stay close to home and accept a full ride to the same school as his HSGF, a crappy D1AA school with nothing going for it athletically or academically except her. He got there and quit football after a couple of days because they didn't name him starter over their returning all-conference sophomore QB. The GF he'd sacrificed so much to stay with broke up with him by the end of that week and started dating the backup QB he could have beaten out by the end of the month. They are still together 20 years later and have 6 kids. The guy I knew, obviously, lost his scholarship and dropped out of college at the end of the year. He wound up driving an armored car for Loomis Fargo, which wasn't a bad gig. But then one Black Friday he took a bag of cash from Walmart that he was supposed to be delivering to the bank. It didn't take long for them to notice the whopping $11 came missing from the deposit he dropped off. He never even got to spend the money. He pled guilty to the felony and works as a personal trainer at the local YMCA now. Not super stunning, but something I just couldn't understand at the time. My brilliant freshman roommate on full ride scholarship and with a 3.8 plus GPA in an engineering field got addicted to Diablo 3 our sophomore year and promptly failed out with a sub 1.0 GPA. He moved back to his hometown and now he does M and works in a hookah bar. I don't know man, just mind-boggling. Video game addiction is a real terrible coping strategy for depression, and people don't take it seriously. Same with sex. M. A cousin had a stable job, a child, and lived in a nice rented house with friends. She was going back to school to get a better job. Then she was in a car crash and hurt her leg. The doctor prescribed Oxy for the pain. For 6 weeks she was on Oxy, then the prescriptions ran out. She made some very bad choices to deal with the withdrawal. Now her child is with relatives. She stays with different relatives and acquaintances. No job, no money. The worst part of her situation is that she has no desire to change it. M will do that to you. I have a friend. She was your typical bartender. She got into M. Bartendering turned into stripping. Stripping turned into prostitution. She would pop up from time to time, each time about 15 pounds skinnier than before. Would get her fed, a haircut, etc. But M does horrible things to your skin. Anyway, haven't seen or spoken to her in a long time now. Had a former friend who smoked weed who started playing with stronger stuff. He would come to a party and drink whiskey straight from the bottle, steal my insulin syringes or cash left lying around. One evening he called me from jail and said he wanted me to pay money to a bail bondsman. He'd been caught as a passenger in a car where the driver was transporting H. It wasn't even my H. It was my friends, he said. I told him, yeah, doesn't it suck when friends drag you into the mess caused by their own bad decisions? And I hung up. Sometimes being in butthole is exactly the kind of wake up call people need. Don't feel bad about it. My little brother became obsessed with a girl. It started with the girl turning him down when he was in high school. She then began dating someone she barely knew. He wasn't okay with it. He felt he was worth more than someone she barely knew. Then it led to a weird obsession. He would threaten her and constantly harass her for an answer as to why. The girl got a restraining order on him. It then led to my brother spiraling even worse from it, only because he felt he wasn't getting the appropriate answer as to why he wasn't getting any answers. He was sent to jail for harassment and forced into a sort of psychiatric ward. He was soon out and went back to harassing the girl again, which led him to jail yet again. He made some false threats about shooting up his old high school just to get her attention and created fake emails and numbers just to message her, which again led him back to not jail but prison this time. My little brother was considered the smartest his whole life and everyone agreed his mind worked quicker than most, but he gave it all up just because a girl said no. That's really crazy. I hope he gets help and finds something else to focus his life on. Apologies for the long comment. My best friend who I grew up with was happy, healthy and comfortable being who he was. He's gay. Before we left school and he went to university 5 years ago. He was a hard-working, friendly dude, nice to everyone and great to hang out with. Moving away from home and getting into a relationship changed him in ways I didn't know possible. He didn't want to finish his course, spent his student finance stupidly, left uni after 2 years, moved in with his boyfriend and started getting jobs at crap places like call centers and getting people to sign up to stuff. Kept quitting because of mental health issues, but he wasn't helping himself, always getting jobs doing what was setting his anxiety and depression off. He's been jobless for about a year now, mooching off his boyfriend, has gained a lot of weight and refuses to admit that he's gone up 2 clothing sizes to what he used to be. Demands his boyfriend does half the housework even though he's got a full-time job. Has a go at him for not doing his share and spends his money on expensive non-essentials. He treats his family like crap and blames all his issues on them too. I think the final wake-up call for me that I've lost the friend I used to love hanging out with is that he never put effort into meeting up with me and he's outwardly abusive to his boyfriend who, in my time of knowing him, is an absolute softie who wouldn't hurt anyone. I don't think I want to see him anymore, to be honest, which hurts since we've known each other for as long as we remember. Tell him. This is pretty tame compared to a lot of the stories here. But when I was in high school, a well-loved and respected teacher was fired because he was stealing copper from the school and selling it. I don't know any more details than that. Anytime I asked about it, people would get defensive and angry, so I stopped asking. High school sort of friend. Bradley. He was part of the preppy posh jock crowd. Football quarterback. Lived in a mansion. His parents dropped him off in a Bentley. He was affable enough. Conventionally handsome. Fit in with his group. After graduation, instead of going to college, like 90% of his cohorts, he started a small business of picking up drapes from residences, cleaning them and rehanging. Turns out he was using that entree to scope out the housewives, and coming back with a ski mask and handcuffs and raping them. It was pretty obvious that his drape cleaning company was a common thread, and his height and build were easily recognized. Pretty much the end for Bradley. WTF Bradley? He was a total piece of crap. He was just good at hiding it. A really good mate of my brother was on his bucks night in a rural setting. Just the boys. You know how that goes. Drunk as frick. They decided to go joyride around the property in a 4WD, which they rolled, and he was in the flat tray on the back and got crushed to death. On his bucks night. RIP Cripsy. I had to Google bucks night, bachelor party for my follow redditors who do not know. People feel invincible when they are drunk and make bad decisions. Your story is sad for all involved. I once had a friend I went to high school and college with. He was a narcissist who lied all the time. About everything. About things that didn't matter. He told every woman he saw. Every time he saw them, you look like you've lost weight, because that's what every woman wants to hear. Or would blatantly compliment them on their chest size. When girls in his life would fret over him and do things like his laundry or dishes for him, he'd brag that he had them wrapped around his finger. He said that he got things like the latest tech gadget 3 months early, but only mentioned that once they'd already been released. Because his dad knows people. His parents were massively in debt but spent like they were in Congress, and he seemed to feel some pressure to appear rich, even though the rest of us didn't care and we went to a small college out in the country. He had no drive or ambition beyond keeping up with the Joneses in his head and flunked or nearly flunked classes with alarming regularity, and NBSP. Despite the fact that he had poor personal hygiene and always bummed liquor off of everyone else, along with always forgetting his wallet when they went out, he had a lot of friends. In high school he kept his weight down due to playing sports and having a set schedule, but that abruptly stopped in college. He gained, literally, about 75 pounds while we were in our first 2 years of college, which he couldn't afford to do at a height of 5 feet 6-ish. When I left college he was still taking classes, and took them for 2 more years. I broke off our friendship but he periodically appears in other people's photos. He's gained about 150 pounds and looks like a perfectly spherical ball with 2 eyes that are recessed inside of fat folds. He didn't finish college and is still living with his parents at 30 years old, working odd jobs until he hits it rich in business. He was always a good salesman and did well at commission-based places but spends all the money he earns as fast as he can earn it. And NBSP. He is literally eating and spending himself to death, and it's like watching a car crash in slow motion. He could be going through something major and the stress is causing him to eat more and retain weight. Just saying. Your story makes me feel kinda bad for him. Former very successful professor started multiple relationships with several students which ended in a Title IX investigation, a nasty divorce and a forced resignation. It was a pretty dark time for the department, and I still feel bad for his kids. My brother was a successful lawyer. My brother is now a disbarred, homeless addict. M is the common denominator in 75% of the stories on this thread. Smartest kid I knew dropped out of school to follow the Grateful Dead around. Took so much acid for so long that he has something like Parkinson's. I met my ex at school. It's a really good university. You're practically guaranteed to be successful when you graduate. He never went to class first semester and failed them all. Talked to his advisor. They gave him a second chance and forgave his grades. Same exact thing happened second semester, except he didn't make it till the end of spring. He left. It broke me watching someone so smart waste such a great opportunity. Sounds like depression. Something similar happened to me. Was extremely depressed. Couldn't bring myself to do my classes. I'm on my feet now and receive treatment, but it really saddens me that students failing university classes isn't taken seriously because it's almost always a mental health issue. 5 guys from high school burned a 6-foot cross in the only African American family on that particular street's yard whilst wearing pillowcases on their heads. As luck would have it that he was monitoring the house across the street because nothing screams middle class white kids like dealing drugs, and the guys were singled out and caught fairly quickly. They of course claim it was a harmless prank fueled by alcohol and poor decision making skills. No bought it and they were all charged and convicted of a hate crime, thus sent to federal prison. The sentences went in descending order. Ringleader lived 2 houses down from me for most of my life. Got 10 years and served dang near all of them. He's never popped back up on the radar since getting out. The shortest sentence was 2 years, and he got released early to a work camp for good behavior. Seems to have his life kinda together these days. Middle sentence guy was by far one of the most popular guys in school. Last I saw him was at a wedding not too terribly long after getting out, and he had crap himself. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.